Warning, 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 warning. Rapid tongue switching may affect a este poema. Because we, all of us here are inside outsiders, outside in climbers. We don't sit on the fence, we ride the mother beeper. Y como resultado, nos llevamos palos por todos lados. Because people, they like to stick to one side, side over there, they hide. And look into the mirror of their discontent. Ahí donde la gente ve sus miedos reflejados, sus prejuicios imitados por otras sociedades que también han engañado. ¿Y qué voy a decir? Si es el mismo mensaje, repetí, tirando del hilo de la paz, mientras ignoran a filósofos de la... y hacen caso a magnates de la raza hasta que we drown in our own fears. Do you hear? Do you hear? Do you even give a comino? Globalizing products, but not people. Materials, not real matters. Fear, but not love. They want you to have. A flat screen, a flat brain, a flat consciousness. Lest you think of crossing that border y así ya de esa frontera, algo que ya era y no algo que es. Algo que divide, algo que impide, algo que consigue destrozar esa hermandad entre pueblos y vecinos. Más quisiera ser cochino que un nacionalista, que un medio fascista. Escondido tras el tie, escondido tras el lie, que te mira y dice, ¡ay! Mientras odio va sembrando, lanzas va lanzando, amistades va apagando, antes que se enciendan unas luces de igualdad, una nueva realidad, una vida de verdad descontrolada. Pause. Stop, look and analyze. Sit upon some big high-rising mountain and look at those little people behind the curtains. Believing the lies they choose to, bowing down to the flags they choose to. Lo dijo otro y es verdad, y es que no hace falta caridad, solo la ausencia de joder al prójimo, solo hacerlo más próximo. Pero con este récord como human race, se ve que esto es something we can't even face. Bueno, hello, good evening. Thank you. So was that Yanito? I don't know. It could be argued that it's not. It doesn't have any Portuguese, Maltese, Sephardic, Arabic, French, or other influences. I'm not transposing grammar from one language to another, not corrupting words from one language to another. So is it Yanito? I would argue that it is. It's Yanito because it was written by a Yanito thinking in Yanito about Yanito issues. I would keep it as simple as that. However, there's no real definition of, at least there's no final definition of what Yanito is. Wikipedia, source of all interneted knowledge, says it's a form of Spanish, heavily laced with words from English and other languages. Dale Buttigieg, local linguist, says it's a language in itself, Our very own Tito Vallejo, in a recent Viewpoint program, I heard him say that a lot of it is corruption of other languages. While in the very same program, Dr. Geraldine Finlinson said that it might be a patois. Okay, so there's a debate there. We're not sure. But nonetheless, we can trace it. Even if we can't put our finger on it, we can trace it. And especially the last 300 years or so are particularly traceable. Oh, one thing I forgot to say, so I have to slip through. If you're from this generation, kind of me, my parents kind of thing, you would have understood it all. If you were from this generation, maybe had some trouble with the Spanish bits. And if you're at this stage in life, pues quizás solo os quedasteis con esto, But anyway, as I say, Yanito is very traceable over the last 100 years. And even, Joe Garcia, editor of the Panorama, said that there was a time when Spanish was the language and therefore had, I would extend from there, had a very big influence on Yanito. Newspapers such as El Calpense, El Anunciador, and Luz were published 100% in Spanish, with its consequent effect on Yanito. And people spoke in a much, if any of you have seen the Evacuee series, and you hear the letters which are written mainly in Spanish to family members, and you hear, I have this quote that keeps going on in my head. ¿Qué quieres de papá? Cartas, muchas cartas. I mean, it didn't even sound from Algeciras, we sounded very, very different to what we do sound now. And this Spanish also affected the Yanito that we did. I think that it's very safe to say that the Spanish language was nurtured from mothers to publishers, theaters to trade unions, basic pre-World War II education provided by churches to the best tutors money could buy. And therefore, it's safe to say that the Spanish language and the British identity, lived relatively comfortably within the Gibraltarian heart, And probably 100 years ago, it would have seemed very similar to the Wikipedia definition of it. However, this cohabitation, let's say, hasn't always been comfortable, let's say. As Jennifer Valentine says, Spanish has always been considered historically as a low prestige language as opposed to English. Colonial policy, it's logical that being a British colony, once colonial policy was implemented in relation to education, we would follow a monolingual system of education. Never mind the fact that the majority of the population post-World War II were still polyglot, minimally bilingual, and quite probably, trilingual in many cases. English was the language if you wanted to prosper within the civil service, if you wanted better wages, even, unfortunately, if you wanted a better toilet at work, So if you spoke like this, you'd have a nice clean toilet with tiles, and a basin for your hands. Y si lo hacían mixing up un poquito así, like right now, pues you had a toilet, no tiles, no basin. And si simplemente hablabais como así ahora, pues tenías a hole in the floor. This isn't a direct attack on the language, but it does create perceptions. It does inform how people view cultures and languages within their community. So, where do we go from here? Of course, as well, another thing that parallelly was affecting Yanito was the decline in immigration. Less people coming from Genoa, Malta, Portugal, meant that these languages have declined locally. So what happens? The weight of colonial policy, we are now around post-World War II. As I say, the weight of colonial policy, along with the rise of Spanish nationalist aggression, slowly squeezing out the Spanish language. And I do mean slowly at first. Newspapers have survived. I think I've gone one slide. Yes. Newspapers have survived in Spanish up until the 60s. I think we have some, even nowadays, some newspapers, I believe, still have a Spanish column in there if they're not fully in Spanish. And Spanish TV channels, whether they were American programs dubbed to Spanish or Spanish, were popular in Gibraltar until, well into the 90s. The 90s. So, what happens? Up until the 90s, it's a rough guide, I didn't go door to door knocking, but this would have been, and I think you'd all agree, I think you might agree that roughly, this would have been the English time for the average Gibraltarian child, school work, mainly in English, media we could add there, whereas TV and grandparents or parents would have had a greater weight in Spanish. Hence, the Yanito spoken in the 80s and 90s wouldn't have been as polyglot or as rich, I would say, as earlier. It would have been a roughly 50-50 split. God damn the time. A roughly 50-50 split between one another, sprinkled with some of these corruptions, from other languages, hasheo, etc., other words. So, But this isn't the end of it. There's still 2 more attacks on polyglottism and, in consequence, Yanito on the rock. The first, I would say, nationalism. You know, Brussels, the 80s. For the first time, Britain, and after a very long and aggressive stance from our neighbors, for the first time, Britain accedes to discussing our sovereignty. Suddenly, there is a need to distinguish ourselves from our neighbors, a need that wasn't there before. And this brought in a new nationalism, a new wave of, I would, in my opinion, nastier nationalism that was more defined by what it was not, Spanish, than by what it was, Gibraltarian. Everything during the 80s that came across the border was looked at with disdain and suspicion. Even I remember in middle school, teachers breaking into political commentary. The lines between national, political, and cultural identity were so blurred that, you know, when finally a documentary was made to honor the generation of Gibraltarians that most suffered for being British, it didn't occur to anyone that many of them might need Spanish subtitles. It still doesn't occur to any of us today. We often push our older generation aside, not with any intent, but unknowingly, you know, and keep them a bit marginalized simply for not speaking English. The result is a loss of a myriad of history, culture, and art that is ours by right, too. You know? The second attack, moving quickly on, and most formidable, in my opinion, Disney. Because like I say, up and well into the border closure didn't kill off Spanish or a heavily Spanish Yanito in Gibraltar, nor did the long border queues of the 80s. This changed the pattern of what we saw before to something like this. Excuse, se me salió un poquito en Yanito, grandparents, pero bueno. You know. I would say, again, I haven't had the time to fully research it, but I would say that this is a fairly accurate guide of the English and Spanish time spent by kids during the 90s and early noughties. Hence, what we see today and what we are worrying about today. My goodness, the time. Panic, panic! Que se nos va Yanito, que se nos va Yanito. Tráelo para atrás, give me un líquido, va a ponerte pa, déjate aseo, ponte un chapeo, que if the Vic is on the floor, the host can pass. Y tú que eres listo y habla inglés, a ver lo que hacemos para arreglar este mes. O por lo menos, even better, don't panic, que no arregla nada. It's not worth it. We can agree that Yanito, even if we can agree on what it is, we can agree that it's an oral expression of our identity, a very fun one at that. We have seen how it grows and or diminishes depending on other languages that feed it. You know, if we don't have other languages, there's no source material for turning licorice bar to likirva, cake to keki, you know, grifa to grifota, hashi, whatever. Sorry. I didn't watch the debate the other day, but I am influenced, I must say. We still have, you know, the lucky thing is, though, you know, despite this loss, is that still today we have the same conditions that led to polyglottism 100 years ago. We are still a port town. We still have a massive influx of travelers and migrant workers. Massive for our size, of course. And we still today have some local communities, such as the Jewish community or the Arab community, the Moroccan community, who maintain their languages. I think the only kind of difference is that it's more segregated. But the change is here. I'm going to take a minute's grace, aviso. The change is here. I notice it. I've seen a couple of viewpoint programs. I hear people on the street and people are talking. These are some, sorry. One comment I was about to make. Without these influences, Yanito is left as British with just, you know, a quijo every now and again. But these are some things that people are saying now, today, about Spanish and languages on the rock in general. Yes, I'm going to let you read them, and I'm going to go relatively quickly through them because I'm running out of time. Yes. I heard I get a minute of... thank you, sir. Okay. Even our old friend Piki, you know, the Gibraltarian, is for it. So what can we do about it? Already there are great steps and very exciting steps being taken. I've heard about the language center at the college, and having worked actually with Leon and with Daniel Benrimo, I know that it's in great hands and it's a very exciting project. I would, though, offer one constructive criticism. It puts, I don't think it should be abandoned, I think it should be taken, but I think that this puts the onus on the children, who, having been robbed of their polyglottic birthright, I don't know if that exists, but anyway, now have to put in extra hours to get it back. And it puts the onus on parents who have to fork out and find the time to take them and bring them back. I would encourage... okay, very quickly. I would encourage this to go on, but I would encourage us to build on it and to look seriously towards the full transformation of our monolingual education from start to finish, a slow, well-measured, gradual progress to bi- and multilingual education. It's certainly possible, and it's certainly doable, and it's certainly a worthy challenge to honor our older generations and to gift to our next generations. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.